Who did you interview, CM or QS? Talk about the information you gained about them.
So I interviewed Peter Santa. Now Peter is the director of Cambridge Homes, and through his career he's done both quantity surveying and construction management. These days he tends to stick to the construction management side. Through his career, Pete actually started as a builder and worked his way up to the positions he's at over his 30 years that he's been in the business.
What did the person believe the key job was, and any difficulties in his role?
So basically, Peter urged the most important part of his role is the time management and the planning phase. Planning is obviously very important as you're able to allocate a certain amount of time for each phase in the project. He mentioned that the timeline is a facility used to make sure that all the contractors get to the site when they are needed, and with a good timeline you're able to bring the project in on time and hopefully to budget. So now Peter obviously mentioned there are some challenges in upholding them and maintaining the timeline. He mentioned a number of factors that can significantly affect the timeline. A couple of these, the weather, that's something you can't control, contractors turning up late, or products not being supplied on time, which just stretches out the time frame.
Did you learn anything new from your interview with the professional? If so, what?
So one thing Peter did mention was a CRM system called RaveBuild. The system allows the tracking of the project and where everyone is up to within the project. I figure this would be very helpful for every individual working on the project, especially the client, as it allows to see where the progress is up to. Another thing Peter mentioned was his prior building experience before taking on a management role. It made me realise that although the study we're gaining all the theoretical knowledge needed for the career, we will be somewhat lacking in a practical aspect. Though Peter did say if times change and qualifications do get you jobs, though I realise practical hands-on experience will be necessary.
From your research in the literature task, what is your understanding of a CM now?
So, in short, my perspective on both quantity surveyors and construction managers didn't change as such, but I definitely gained a lot more knowledge and a greater understanding of what they actually do in their roles. What is one of the key jobs you carry out in real life that relate to the core of your profession?
I think the key job is the planning of the project. The planning is how the project will run. The best way to achieve this is through a timeline. Now, the timeline is the facility that you use to make sure that all the contractors know when they are to go to the job and how much time they've got to perform the task. By the end of the project, a good timeline will bring the project in on time and to budget.
For my assignment, I interviewed Cameron Burnett, who is a project manager here in Auckland and has been on the job for 2 years now. Cameron considered the main task in his job was to ensure the project was meeting deadlines and coming in on target, time-wise. It was his job to do this from the very beginning of the project, when the client first employs him, in the outset of a job, to the closeout and handing the keys over to the client. There are many challenges in the job that he talked about. These included designing the project to the client's brief, dispute management, particularly between the contractor QS and the project QS, time pressure constraints, scope creep, and making sure the contractor or contractors, subcontractors have all the information required to get on with their job. And you can read more about all these problems in my personal report. In my interview with Cameron, I learned a couple of things, like the difference between the construction manager and the project manager, along with the general stress in the job of being a project manager, particularly like time pressure constraints. I talked about that more in my personal report, so you can read up about that. a quantity surveyor. You know, essentially their role is to determine the costs of a construction project, and this includes, you know, the materials and the labor costs. You know, it's their job to handle all the finances. Um, you know, that's their main task. There's lots of different, like lots of other tasks that they have to go over, um, but this is sort of the main one. And I also, you know, expand on that in my personal report, and I also go on about the you know the project manager and the construction manager, which I learned the difference about. Yeah, how the construction manager is, you know, based on site, and he's looking after, you know, primarily the contractors, whereas the project manager is looking, you know, looking both after the construction manager and the consultant team, and just linking all this information back up to the client. So yeah, I'm Logan Burnett, and thank you for listening.
As a project manager, we run site meetings on site every week. At these site meetings, we take minutes. These minutes are like discussion notes that we type up and send out to all the consultants and the contractor every week. It might sound like a bit of a boring task, but it's crucial to the construction project. For example, let's say I'll tell Mr. Contractor to put in a new drainage pipe for us. I'll put in the minutes and action him for that week. Let's say 3 weeks rolls around and that drainage pipe hasn't been installed, and it's put us 2 weeks behind schedule. So at critical completion, we've been pushed out 2 weeks. Now let's say the tenant or the client that's going to move back into this building has been paying rent elsewhere. So that 2 weeks rent, who's going to pay for that? The client's not going to pay for it, so they're going to tell the contractor to pay for it. They're going to say, well, no, we're not in the wrong here, so we have to go back to the minutes. That was maybe 5 weeks ago. That says, I told you to put this drainage pipe in, you didn't do it, so you have to pay this 2 weeks rent that the clients had to pay.
And at these meetings, so like everyone's involved in these meetings, because everyone's, you know,
Exactly.
needing to know what's going
The
on.
consultant team and the contractor.
Yeah.
So you got your architect that's there, you got your engineers, you got your project manager, your QS might be there, you have your contractor, his site manager, and you might have the contractor's QS as well.
Okay. Thank you for that, Cam.
Who did you interview? Can you tell us a little bit about their background?
The quantity surveyor I interviewed was George Whitby. He's a director of a company called Construction Cost Management Limited. He's a registered quantity surveyor with the NZIQS and is also a member of the Royal Institute of Chartered Quantity Surveyors. He gained his qualification from the Glasgow College of Building, and he specialises in quantity surveying, project management, insurance evaluations, estimating, property maintenance evaluations and dispute resolutions. He has over 40 years experience in the building industry, including work on international projects.
What did the professional believe the key job was, and any difficulties that they faced in this role?
One of the key jobs that my QS was responsible for on one of their latest projects was drawing together a building contract between the client and the contractor. He was responsible for advising on any special conditions in regards to the contract. He felt that it was very important to get these conditions correct right from the beginning so that you avoid any disputes later on in the building project. He also needed to work out a time frame needed to be agreed on, and whether it was a fixed price or lump sum contract or a combination with provisional sums involved, and also if there were any special conditions that needed to be added to the contract. This particular contract was unique as the client doesn't own the building. It was a rented office space from a building owner. And in this particular contract, the building owner needed to also be involved in the contract, as it was a drastic change in the use of the building, and there was also some structural changes being made. So it was very important that the contract covered all of these aspects.
Did you learn anything from your interview with a professional?
I learnt that it is very important to keep up to date with the latest standards, your codes, and your conditions of contract. You have to keep educating yourself and growing your knowledge base to ensure you're assisting your clients in the most appropriate and effective way.
From your research, what is your understanding of a quantity surveyor?
A quantity surveyor is a professional working within the construction industry. They're mostly concerned with the construction costs and the contracts. The quantity surveyor has to ensure that the client is receiving value for money and that the contractor is paid a fair and reasonable price for the work that they've undertaken.
Hi, my name is George Whitby. I'm the Director Principal of Construction Cost Management Limited, and we specialise in project management, quantity surveying, building disputes and property maintenance evaluations and insurance evaluations. And I'm a member of the New Zealand Institute of Quantity Surveyors. I'm also qualified as an associate member of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors.